Months, we've seen racial tensions rise in the New York City area with the verdict from Howard Beach and the ensuing incidents that occurred weeks afterwards, and the appointment of a new school chancellor in New York City, a school system whose student population is primarily minority, Hispanic, and black. We've seen a lot and heard a lot of rhetoric, a lot of statements, and we've seen some figures arise out of these racial tensions. One of the most controversial is our guest this morning on People Are Talking. He's Father Lawrence Lucas. Just a few weeks ago, this statement caused quite a bit of controversy. He made this statement to a Channel 5 reporter in reference to the appointment of a new school chancellor for New York City. Those who are killing us in our homes, falsely arresting us in our homes, falsely arresting us in the subway, who are murdering us in the streets, come primarily from the Catholic persuasion. Those who are killing us in the classroom, I do not have to tell you from what persuasion they come from. You just have to look at the Board of Education, and it looks like the Knesset in Israel. That particular statement provoked a mild rebuke from Cardinal O'Connor, because our guest this morning is a Roman Catholic priest. The Anti-Defamation League condemned and criticized his remarks, and Mayor Koch recently said Father Lucas is a cancer, and cancers have to be removed by surgery or radiation or by chemotherapy. First, they have to be identified. Now, Father Lucas says that some of his comments have been taken out of context, but he does back up what he says. And he is here this morning to answer his critics face to face. Please welcome Father Lawrence Lucas to People Are Talking. Good morning, Father. Thank you for joining us today. Before I go into some of these statements, one of the things that the press has seemed to focus on is the fact that you carry a handgun. You have had a police permit for a gun since 1963. Why do you carry a gun?
Well, I think there's a difference between you carry a gun or you have a permit to begin with.
Do you carry the gun on your bodily person?
Sometimes I do and sometimes I do not. Now, first, that's really irrelevant to what we're here primarily, but as you said, particularly the Post, and I mentioned that because not only is that a new low in journalism, but I think everybody knows it's been supporting Mayor Koch for some time. But the New York City Police Department, as you know, is about the strictest in this nation in regard to guns. The Sullivan Law, there's no other like it. I have a permit because while we proclaim the land of the free and the home of the brave and free speech, apparently any time you dare to speak the truth which is not acceptable to certain parts of the population, then the threats multiply.
So if you were attacked, you would use that gun?
Well, I would suspect so, if I were unjustly attacked.
Well, what about though, I think some people find that to be a strange reaction. The other day in New York City, an 89-year-old Monsignor was pushed to the snow and mugged. He went to the hospital. He said, though, I forgive a person who does me wrong. After he was pushed. Yeah. People would assume that a Roman Catholic priest would turn the other cheek if he was attacked.
Well, in the first place, that's a total distortion of the scriptures, because the turn the other cheek phrase had nothing to do with what we have been traditionally programmed. It had to do with a Semitic gesture of excommunication, and in the context in which that was used...
So you will not turn the other cheek if you're attacked?
I think we ought to clarify that. In the context in which that was used, it had to do with the Lord telling his disciples, if you really belong to me, you can't belong to the crowd and the populace who think different and serve different values. So when they excommunicate you, turn the other cheek and let them give you that gesture again, indicating you're really mine. Now, I know we have been programmed differently. I think it's also very true that part of Catholic theology and most other theologies, the right, the God-giving right of legitimate self-defense is available to everybody.
Even for a priest?
Including priests. And that's why, for example, in the Old Testament, David did not go with his fingernails to face Goliath. He went with the weapons available at the time. When Jesus was on his way, for example, from Galilee, and he asked his disciples, how many swords do you have? And they said 2. I'm assuming they didn't carry the weapons of the day in order to clean their fingernails, but it was a legitimate self-defense.
Okay,
I think that when the mayor raised that, and that's very important, the mayor says nothing about the at least seven bodyguards who are armed with guns that go around with him every place he steps. He didn't talk about 11 other Catholic priests in the city of New York, in the Archdiocese, who have gun permits, nor did he talk about the number of rabbis who have gun permits in the city of New York. They didn't seem to appall him. Only I did, who had very legitimate reasons for it, and in addition, I'm an accomplished target shooter and belong to several clubs.
Are you carrying your gun with you today?
No, I won't. Okay. Certainly I do not have a gun with me now.
This was handed to me before the show, and I don't know if we can get a shot of this, if you can get up closely enough. It says, we don't want him around, do you? and there's a picture of you, and there is a bullseye drawn around your face. Have you seen this?
I haven't seen it. I heard that it exists, and I think that's a good indication of what we really believe about free speech in this country. See, I haven't shot any...
Let's put this where it belongs, really, okay?
Yeah, but I think it's very interesting. I haven't shot anybody. I haven't hurt anybody physically in any way. If I hurt somebody by telling the truth, then I think they have to look to them. But that's the response to what I had to say is namely a bullseye.
Okay.
And I think that speaks more of those who produce that than it does of me.
All right, let's talk about some of the truth, as you say, that you have spoken. This one statement that I read at the top of the show.
Yeah.
You say that those who are killing us in the classroom, by us you mean the black population.
Yeah.
We don't have to say what persuasion they come
Okay.
from. You're saying basically Jews control the educational system. You said the Board of Education looks like the Knesset in Israel.
Yeah.
Are Jews killing blacks in the classroom?
No, I think you have to put that in. I did not speak to a Channel 5 reporter. Normally, I do not speak to a Channel 5 reporter or a New York Post because it's the same ownership, and I think we know what that represents.
Well, tell me, I don't know what it represents. What does it represent?
Well...
Is it Jewish ownership? The New York Post?
No, that's not what it represents. It represents one of the greatest supporters in the media, although most of them... I think if you would compare what the media did to Richard Nixon, and I think rightly so, and then you look at the corruption that has been all through the present administration of Mayor Koch, and how well the media treats him, even today in Newsday. You have a week in the life of the mayor. If the Mayor Koch had gotten the same treatment for the amount of corruption in his administration that Richard Nixon has gotten, he would not be mayor today. That's what I mean about the New York Post. Now, getting back, that was not said to a reporter. That was said in a rally in front of 110 Livingston Street, 3 days after that very successful day of outrage in New York City. The day of outrage had to do with the killing, the physical killing of African Americans in the streets and in their homes in New York City. 1110 Livingston had to do with what everybody, including the mayor, said was a disaster, namely the New York City school system. Even the mayor says that. And I don't normally go around quoting him.
I'm running out of time here, so I want to focus the point. Why compare the Board of
point.
Education to the Knesset in Israel?
Well, the point that was made, which was in the very next sentence, and the board was not precisely the board of 7 membership. When the African-American community, when we say the Board of Education, naturally I don't expect the media in this city to be familiar with us that much.
There's only one Jew on the Board of Education.
That's correct, but the Board of Education means the entire school system. Now, that's the way, and it's very interesting. Even Jimmy Breslin picked that up and understood what was meant by that, and I clarified it in the very next sentence. You see, I'm not the one who determined that I would be shown on television that evening, nor was I the one who edited what would be shown. The very next sentence made that clarified. What I simply said was just as, if you go back to Clifford Glover, Eleanor Bumpers, and you name them, even up until the last one on the 31st of December, very often, New York City police officers are killing African Americans of all ages and genders. A large percentage of the New York City Police Department is comprised of Roman Catholics. My challenge was to the leadership of the Roman Catholic Church to come out as strongly against the killing of African Americans outside the womb as they seem to be inside the womb. I then turned and drew the parallel to the educational system. Nobody can deny, first of all, that the vast majority of the students, I don't use the term minorities because on the world population we are a majority, are African American and Hispanic students. Nobody, including the mayor, denies that the school system has been a disaster. Nobody can rightfully deny that within that whole structure called the school system, the Jews are very influential. My challenge was I would like to see the Jewish leadership out here supporting our attempt to prevent the normal process from going through where Mayor Koch attempts to bring in either a black face or any other face, but the primary purpose is to keep business as usual.
Why is it necessary, though, to identify the Jewish
It was necessary
segment?
to identify, no, not the Jewish segment totally. It was necessary to identify, I was speaking about education, and it was just as correct to talk about the Jewish influence in education as it is to talk about the Catholic influence in the police department. And I don't think that's any more anti-Catholic. That's a joke. I've been a Catholic all my life and a Catholic priest for 28, going on 29 years. I don't think that's any more anti-Catholic or anti-Semitic than it is when the Jews, even today, when the Jews are saying John Paul II has a second chance in regard to Waldheim, when they were legitimately pointing out the silence of Catholics in Hitler Germany, when they were pointing out the very little effort made by Pius XII in regard to Hitler. nobody called that anti-Catholic or anti-papal, but Catholics were involved, and their silence were felt and did not aid the cause at all.
Cardinal O'Connor, who is your religious leader here in New York, the leader of the Archdiocese, said, in a mild rebuke, my personal loyalties to a brother priest cannot justify my condoning rhetoric that either in or out of context could be construed by reasonable persons as racist, anti-Semitic, and ironically even anti-Catholic, regardless of the intention of the speaker.
And I agree with that 100%, but except the logic
people have construed your statements as being anti-Semitic, though.
Some people have deliberately for their own purpose. I think nobody could deny that Mayor Koch's whole career as mayor has been built upon, first, the money he gets from those he gives away the city to in terms of real estate, and his ability to polarize the people, the races in the city of New York.
And you're not polarizing them?
I don't believe I'm polarizing them for telling the truth and having the mayor misconstrued. Let me talk about the Cardinals thing, because I have his entire statement, and I don't know.
Right.
I've simply taken a sentence out of. In the first place, if the Cardinal wanted to rebuke me or reprimand me, whatever that means, since I'm a grown man and not a child, he knew exactly where to find me, and issuing a somewhat innocuous statement of a page and a half, I do not call a mile or any kind of rebuke. Secondly, you assume that that statement has to do with what I had to say. And I understand the game. It's rhetoric if I don't like it, and it's ideas and words if I like it. But I assume that he directs that towards Mayor Koch. So it's a question of how you look at it. If he had
something... Do you really assume that this is directed towards Mayor Koch?
Because Mayor Koch has been doing far more of that. And secondly, let's look at the logic of in or out of context, because that really makes no sense. If you say you cannot speak anything which can be, whether in or out of context, that can be misconstrued, then the books of the collection we call the Bible will never have been written, because those words have been taken in and out of context to mean anything. I hear Ronald Reagan using it, George Wallace, Lester Matters. Again, Jesus would never have been able to open his mouth, because look at what people have done through the centuries with his words.
Okay,
Cardinal O'Connor couldn't open his mouth. Look at what they did.
Here.
Oh, all right.
Let me ask you a very simple question, though, and maybe I can get a simple answer from this. In your heart, do you love Jews and white people as well as you love black people?
In my heart, I love everybody, and in my mind, but my mind does not confuse love with dealing with justice and injustice. I'm anti-injustice, and wherever injustice is, if I'm true to my calling, I have to be. And whether that injustice is being perpetrated by Catholic in any way, by Jews in any way, by black people in any way, by anybody in any way, if I'm truly anti-injustice, then I have to be anti-injustice. Now, if somebody wants to take that and distort it to mean what the mayor is so good at, he's not too very well at administering the city of New York, but he's very good at doing that, then I don't think that the truth has to be shut up in order to please that.
Okay.
When Cardinal O'Connor went to Palestine last year, what happened to his words? I don't think he's going to shut up. And if I were to shut up because of what people could do with my words, quote, in or out of context, then I might as well fold my wings and float away.
Thank you. We've got to take a break right now. When we come back, Father Lucas will meet some of his critics face to face. Stay with us. Welcome back to People Are Talking. Guest this morning, Father Lawrence Looker. What did you just say before we went on the air? You said he's the devil.
Yes,
You think Forrest Lawrence Lucas is the devil?
a man who preaches that whites are devils, who attends meetings, and I have the flyer of the meeting he attended with a whole bunch of anti-American militants in the black community, Roger Wareham of the New York 8 and others. A man who openly says and praises Hitler in the Black American, a newspaper, in an article he wrote in 1979, which is being reprinted and distributed in New York City to the media. He's just punking out. He's not willing to admit that he's a Jew hater.
But you're saying that he's saying something different today than what he really believes.
He's playing a game. Now, he's not stupid. He's a very, very smart bigot. He hates the police. He hates whites. And he hates Jews.
He just said that he loves Jews.
If he loves Jews, God help us.
Joining us right now is Assemblyman Dov Hikand. Am I pronouncing it?
Dov Hikand.
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 He's been an assemblyman for 6 years. His district includes Bay Ridge, Borough Park, and Flatbush in Brooklyn. In your opinion, in your assessment, from what you've seen, from what you've heard, is Father Lucas dangerous?
I think he's dangerous. I think he's very dangerous. I believe he's an anti-Semite. if one looks at his record...
He just said in the last segment, and I do want to address this, he just said that he does love Jewish people, he loves white people, he loves black people in his heart. He dislikes injustice.
Yes, I dislike...
Do you believe that's a false statement?
Yes, I believe it's a false statement. If one looks at his record over a number of years, statements that he has made publicly, then one would believe that he was actually quoting from the Protocols of the Elders of Zion, which is a hate-filled document used throughout the 20th century, directed against the Jewish people, used by the most notorious anti-Semites from Hitler and up and down the line. That record is filled with statements about Jewish power, Jewish control, Jewish dominance. And I find it remarkable that Reverend Lucas will tell us that his statements do not hurt anyone, because I do not know precisely what the facts are out there in the community when someone preaches the kind of hate that Reverend Lucas preaches.
Let's talk about that dominance.
It does hurt.
Let's talk about this so-called dominance that that we hear a lot about from the fringe, but is very rarely talked about on television or in the newspapers. There has been here's a quote that Father Lucas had made in the past, and he can explain this quote as well if I'm taking this one out of context. Jews wield so much influence because of their money and its consequent power to the extent of almost controlling U.S. domestic and especially foreign policy. The U.S. of Israel may be an exaggeration, but there is much to be said of it. Father Lucas, let me ask you, in your opinion, do Jews have a dominance in controlling U.S. foreign policy as well as domestic policy here in the United States?
I think it goes without saying that there is a great influence of that Jews exercise both in
Is that influence
foreign...
out of proportion to their democratic segment of the population?
I think it's out of proportion to numbers and more in proportion to money, but I think I have to answer...
Well, let me just run down some of these things here, because I want to get this clarified.
Yes.
So we're talking about foreign policy, domestic policy.
Yes.
Do Jews as well wield a tremendous influence over the media?
I think that's fairly clear.
Where does that come from?
When you speak about the movie industry and when you talk about the media, particularly here in New York City, I think that's very true. And to state that, I do not know if that becomes anti-Semitic. You see, I think when...
Well, Bill Cosby, though, and Oprah Winfrey are two of the highest paid, most powerful, most well-loved people on television.
There sure are, but I think, you see, this country has a knack of taking the blackface exception and pretending as if that proves the rule. I don't think, financially speaking, Bill Cosby or Oprah Winfrey represents the economic input of black people. So I think you have to be very careful about that. Again, I do not mind defending what I say, but I'm certainly not going to allow this gentleman to say that I said Hitler was right. I defy him to show you that where I said it, not where somebody else may have said. Again, he's very concerned...
I would like to address that,
yes,
because
yes.
Reverend Lucas specifically said, his words, Hitler's Holocaust took place in the land which he could rightly call his own,
let's stop right
and
there for a
against a group of people who are exercising a great degree of economic influence.
All right, wait a second. What is incorrect about that statement?
Well, what he is saying in that statement is...
But wait a second. Wait a second. What's incorrect about that statement? I don't want to justify racism or anti-Semitism, but actually, it's historically incorrect because Hitler came from Austria, not from Germany, number one. So that is historically incorrect. But number two, Jews did have a great economic influence in post-war Germany. Is that incorrect or not?
They had influence. The degree of influence is not the issue. The degree of influence is not the issue in Germany, and it is not in this country. The fact is that ever since decentralization in New York City, there has been a decrease in the number of Jewish teachers. And ever since decentralization, it is black communities that are controlling their schools, and they are still failing. The dropout rates have not changed in spite of black control of schools. You know, listening to Reverend Lucas, I didn't realize the extent of danger until I actually met you and listened to you today, because you are no different from the anti-Semites of the neo-Nazi party, and no different from the anti-Semites throughout history. What you are saying, and what is incredible, is that you do not realize what you are saying. You do not realize that you are sending a message out there that will result in violence, hate, and division rather than bringing people closer together.
I think that you have to understand that while he talks, I'm sure he doesn't understand that the rhetoric of Mayor Koch does the same thing. As I said before, I will defend what I say and what is intended and what is directly stated. That statement that he just read had nothing to do with the statement that said I said Hitler was correct.
What is your attitude towards... Well, let's clarify that. What is your attitude towards the Holocaust?
The attitude towards the Holocaust is as heinous and damnable as the continuing Holocaust towards African-American people. After all, we lost 50 million just in the transportation, you see, and that Holocaust is still going on right now.
Are you passionate, are you as passionate
Yes,
in your condemnation of Hitler's Germany as you are of South Africa?
Yes, and I wish all of those would be as passionate as they are towards what I said, and especially what he distorts me to say. Let me put that in the context which you read. The context of that was not simply taken out of the air. It was in the context when we were talking about America's use of Israel in the support of apartheid in South Africa, which verbally we claim we're against. And what I pointed out there was that while Hitler, regardless of where he came from, was irrelevant, what I was pointing out there that in Germany, Hitler had some foundations which he used for his genocidal attack against human beings, which in no way could be. I'm saying there is no justification whatsoever for Israel and the United States supporting the apartheid regime in South Africa. Now, that was the context, and I defy anybody who is rational to...
Assemblyman Hikand, will you condemn the apartheid regime in South Africa?
Absolutely. And the fact is that American Jewish leaders of every major organization, members of Congress who are Jewish, members of the Assembly and State Senate, have been arrested along with black leaders in Washington and New York for the cause of the people of South Africa, for the injustices of South Africa.
It's still going on.
But it's still going on, and we must continue to fight.
That's the point I make.
Reverend
It's
Lucas,
still going on.
Reverend Lucas, you wear a collar. You are the head of a church, a Catholic church, and it is incredible that you are involved in the business of spreading hate, no different from the kind of newspapers that are put out by the neo-Nazi parties. There's no difference.
I leave it to those whose intelligence are such to make the conclusion. I leave it to those of intelligence to draw the conclusion as to whether the statement he read, as opposed to the words that he said he was quoting me.
Well, I tried to clarify that statement.
Whether that
Father
is
Lucas,
hate or not.
Father Lucas, whether a system is racist or a system is anti-Semitic, why is it necessary for you to identify or to turn to this group and say, well, this is the way Jews treat blacks, or this is the way Poles treat blacks, this is the way Catholics treat blacks? Isn't that divisive in its very nature?
You know, for me to buy that logic is if someone was beating me upside the head with a baseball bat, and I started to shout and say, hey, this person is killing me, and somebody came along and said, as he continues to swing the bat and say, hey, you're dividing everybody, why do you have to identify? I am talking about the issue of the police brutality and killing of black folks in New York City.
And you're saying that...
talk about that this is not a heavily Catholic institution and that the church leadership has failed in speaking out against this killing of us after the womb as it does talking about inside the womb is a failure to preach the gospel.
Richard, the whole concept of the civil rights movement was to get away from this generalization.
And one thing
if I'm attacked by someone, I don't say a black attacked me, a Jew, an Italian, an Irishman.
Exactly.
And that's precisely what this member of the Catholic Church has done.
Exactly.
That is a lot of baloney because that is not true.
Father Lucas, following your logic, though, in the old days it used to be you'd pick up a newspaper and you'd see somebody was robbed or mugged or a burglary or somebody was shot, and it would say the assailant was black or the assailant was Hispanic or the assailant was white. After a while it seemed that by identifying the person by race was irrelevant in the newspapers, and most newspapers now follow that criteria when they report a crime. Following your logic, shouldn't we return to those days where we identify who the assailants are?
Never. Those days you're talking about, whenever the assailant was black, it was identified. It wasn't done the same way the other way around.
And it was wrong.
But the point that we're making here is, if you're supposed to be quiet, I think everybody understands or should understand that it's easy when you talk about anti-Semitic, and I think the mayor really did that deliberately to do exactly this kind of thing. But you're talking to not someone who just came on the scene, maybe the white media just remember, but you're talking to someone who 18 years ago wrote a book entitled Black Priest, White Church, not only spelling out the meaning of racism, because a lot of folks like to identify with prejudice and hate and all that, which is only part of it, but they do not want to see that the essential ingredient of racism, which is different from prejudice, is a total control of the processes, the systems and institutions of a country on the side of one part of the population racially as opposed to the other.
Is it our ideal, though, to work towards
outline the very institutional racism in the Catholic Church, of which I'm a member, and its participation in the racism in the society as a whole?
Are we working for a better society, though, Father Lucas, an ideal society?
I wish that were true. But today there are more blacks being killed in the streets of the city of New York and in their homes by New York City police than there were in 1960.
Okay,
now, if that's moving to a better society,
I've got to take a break right now. When we come back, I'm going to be talking to people out here who are Father Lucas supporters. Some of them are people who find him to be a very dangerous man. We'll find out what their perception is of Father Lucas's message in just a moment. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
People are talking about the new movie Broadcast News, fact or fiction. Tomorrow you'll meet some top anchors and producers and get the real scoop on life inside a network newsroom. Be part of our live studio audience.
Sarah Lee Kessler, here's what's happening. Fire has claimed the life of one person. It swept through a 7-story building in Hackensack. The cold snap is expected to ease up later today, but word is more snow is on the way. And there's word the Soviets are going to pull their troops out of Afghanistan by the end of 1988. And the hottest time around seems to be tea time. We'll have the civilized details, all coming up at noon. Richard.
Thank you, Sarah Lee. Our guest this morning, Father Lawrence Lucas, probably the most controversial priest of the moment in the New York City Archdiocese, Assemblyman Dov Hikand, who feels that Father Lucas is dangerous, racist, and anti-Semitic. We have a telephone call. Good morning. You're on People Are Talking. Speak out. Good morning. You're on the air.
Hello.
You're on the air. Speak out.
Yes, I was calling to say that I'm not really familiar with Father Lucas or whatever because I moved to Georgia and about 4 months ago. But I've experienced Jewish teachers in school and everything.
Are you black?
Yes, I am.
And what is your statement? What is your reaction to that?
My reaction is that what I feel is that I've experienced Jewish teachers and how they treated me in school.
Well, how did they treat you? What do you mean by that?
Well, most of them, they waited, talking when I was in New York,
yeah,
waiting for their 10-year and very prejudiced in one way. And I can see with that, but...
You're prejudiced against Jews?
No, I'm not prejudiced against Jewish, but I've seen reactions, with kids in my class and how teachers have treated them.
And you think that a black teacher could have given you a better education?
In some ways, yes, because I've had one particular teacher, and she sits in the class and she talks about how all she can wait is for her 10-year, and...
Well, that may necessarily be a bad teacher. I don't know why that's necessary to identify her as a bad Jewish teacher. Thank you for that telephone call. I have another phone call coming up. Good morning. You're on People Are Talking.
Good morning, Richard.
You're on the air.
Good morning.
You're on the air.
Hello, good morning.
You're here. Speak out.
Okay, I live in Crown Heights, Brooklyn, where there has been a lot of racial tension between the blacks and the Jews. I would just like to say that to me, it's amazing how the Jews can protect one another, never let overall people forget what they've been through as far as the Holocaust and whatever terrible things that they've been through. But when the black people or a black person tries to protect their own and never let other people forget what we've been through, we're an endangerment and we're just totally impossible. No one can accept that fact for us, and I would just like to bring up that point.
Okay, thank you. I wish we would get to the point where we would all care about each other's safety and welfare and stop thinking about just Jews taking care of Jews and blacks taking care of blacks. We've all got to live in this city together. And it seemed during the 60s, Jews and blacks went arm in arm to ask for equal rights for all people, regardless of race, religion, color. They held hands, they were killed together, they were spat on together, they were hosed down by high-pressure water together, and they stood together. What has happened?
Richard, there is no group in this country that played a greater role joining their black brothers in fighting for civil rights, not only in the 60s, but going back to the 40s and 50s. That record is crystal clear.
And but
that's why it's...
After we pat ourselves on the back for that, let's remember that Jews also march for blacks, but for themselves too.
That's precisely correct.
If a black does not have equal rights in this country, if a black is not a citizen with every right that is given to him by the Constitution, then a Jew will not have those rights either.
Rich, I want to share a letter.
If you can, very briefly.
Yes. This letter was circulated by Reverend Heron Sam in the Crown Heights community.
Okay, very briefly.
And this letter, in talking about issues in Crown Heights and the Jewish community, refers to the Jewish community with regard to aggressive Zionist expansionist policy. The kind of hate being spread by Reverend Lucas is something that is becoming a phenomena. He is joined by, unfortunately, others who head congregations, who head churches, who are preaching this kind of expansionist Zionist...
But Assemblyman Hikand, whether you agree or disagree with Israel's political policies does not make you an anti-Semite, does it? It makes you...
No, but talking about Zionist expansionist policy in Crown Heights...
Oh, in Crown Heights.
In Crown Heights. Okay. That's the issue.
Okay.
What does expansionist policy have to do with Crown
I
Heights?
think several things has to be said, because in the first place, I do not know if that quote is any more accurate, and I'm not going to here defend that any more than what the New York Post has done with me.
You will condemn that quote?
Well, I would want to find out whether the man said it and what he mean by it before.
Well, if he said it, would you condemn it?
I'm not
if
going
he
to fall,
said it, would you condemn it?
I'm not going to fall into that bag.
But if
I
he
want the
said
man
it,
to tell me
would
what he
you
said.
condemn it?
To say, because Doug Hike could stay here and call what I'm saying hatred, anti-this,
But if he
and I
said
could
it,
say exactly the same
Reverend
thing as to
Lucas,
what he is
Reverend
saying.
Lucas.
Okay.
Secondly,
let me leave this one point for a moment and go to our audience, who hasn't had very much of a chance to speak out. Would you stand up, please? This is Sarah Lee McWhite. You are from, what, Bensonhurst or Coney Island? Or?
No, Bensonhurst, Marlborough Houses to be exact.
Okay, as a black person, a black citizen of New York, what is the message that you received from Father Lucas?
The message I'm receiving from both of them, you should be ashamed of yourselves. Gentlemen, last night I stood on a TV show, on news, telling people that we were trying to find a way to end racial problems in Bensonhurst. Reverend Sharpton stood up and later lied and said, no, he did not promise anything as of not coming back into our community, as well as the fact that he did not apologize to us or our community. All of you should be ashamed of yourselves. You are killing people with your hate. You are not going to solve racism by pointing fingers, by calling people names, and you're not going to solve it by saying, I'm black, I'm white, I'm Jewish, I'm Catholic, I'm whatever.
Reverend Lucas says he's only speaking the truth.
The truth. You want the truth? The truth is, normal, everyday people are tired of listening to this. We want our children to go to school and learn. If you would stop pointing fingers and accusing each other of this, that, and every other thing, and start working together, we could have better schools. We wouldn't have to walk down the streets and be afraid no matter what color you are. Jobs would be there for all. You can do it, but you first have to start talking to each other and stop shouting at each other.
All right, give me a big hug, huh?
Richard.
All right, earlier in the show, I crumpled up a piece of paper and threw it over the edge of the seat there. It was a picture of Reverend Lucas with a bullseye drawn around his face. You were the gentleman that supplied that picture. You want to see Father Lucas dead?
The fact is that I want
Well, wait a second. Answer that question.
I'll answer the question. Politically, I'd like his political power to be put out of business. Yes, to have him have no political power. Physically, no.
You don't want...
Politically
But wait
dead.
a second. You drew a bullseye. You know where a bullseye comes from? Not from a ballot box. It comes out of a gun.
Yes.
Don't you feel that what you've done is provocative and dangerous? I'm putting words in his mouth? Do we have that picture? Do you have that picture? I'm putting words in your mouth? What words am I putting? Yes, go ahead.
All right. I asked the record to show to every intelligent individual to follow through from the moment this program began until now, how many seconds the white or Jewish majority has spoken, and how many seconds, let the record show, how many times he's had the floor.
Hey, take off your hat. It's too high. It's too tight on your head there. Here. Yes. Stand up, please. All right. There's the picture. I'm putting words in his mouth. But that is the picture that was handed to us this morning. Okay, sir. Yes.
I want to get his autograph.
All right.
All right. I'm with WNBC Radio, and I've had most of these gentlemen on my programs, and I've been covering this kind of area for the last 5 years, and I'd just like to talk about the media for a second. I have to agree with that lady very strongly, and what media has done. Now what I'm talking about is television media, especially the television reporter, who are not really reporters. It's showbiz. When they go into Howard Beach, when they go into Bensonhurst, they deliberately aim for the worst they can find. And what that's taught us... well, what that has taught white people, I think, white ethnics, particularly Howard Beach and Bensonhurst, is we're getting a dose of what they have gotten all of their lives. Because television seems to define New York City as 96th Street to the Bowery. If they go up into Spanish Harlem, it's because, as someone on Channel 4 said, my first assignment, the mother threw her child out the window. They don't go into the burgs. They don't go into the outer boroughs. They're not New Yorkers. They don't know New York, and they do more damage than they do any help. I was at Bensonhurst last week. There were these 16-year-old kids on the corner who were troublemakers. That's who the cameras went to. Not to a priest, not to adults. They went to the rebel flag held by some imbecile 16-year-old Italian kid with chains around his neck. They presented him as Bensonhurst, and that's wrong. Okay. And media has failed us.
Okay, thank you. Any other quick questions or opinions out here? Anybody have something to say? Yes, ma'am.
My problem is that if Reverend Lucas was white, I don't think they have made such a big thing out of it.
All right. Reverend Lucas, would you have been treated differently by the media, by Cardinal O'Connor, if you had been a white priest, do you think?
Well, first, I don't believe that I was treated badly by Cardinal O'Connor, but I agree with her. If I were white, and white priests have been saying and telling the same truth, you say, while everybody applaud what this young lady says, and I think she's entitled to her opinion, I'm not ashamed, because it's like the alcoholic saying, I want to be cured, but without having anybody to tell me or to admit that I'm an alcoholic. You see, you could get up there and talk all of that nice kind of rhetoric, but still every day, every other day, you pick up the newspapers, an African-American, whether it's a grandmother or whether it's a child, is being killed by New York City
and people
police.
in the neighborhoods are picking up the newspapers and reading about white people being robbed by black people, and they're saying, look, it just shows that black people...
But everybody in this city understands...
No,
it's not. Everybody, you see, in this city understands that when you talk about, quote, black crime, it's 80% is black on black. And so they don't care about that. There are far less white people being robbed by blacks than there are blacks. Again, when this gentleman condemns me for being...
Correct.
I don't think that's a correct statement.
When this gentleman accuses me...
And
when this gentleman
even
condemns
Benjamin Ward,
me,
who is a black man, who is the police commissioner, said that most of the violent crimes committed in New York...
That's exactly the issue that I think. We talk about Jews and blacks marching in civil rights. What people do not understand is the African-American community today is not dealing with civil rights, which are totally within the processes, the institutions and systems controlled by white folks. We're talking about human rights, which come from God, see, and which is a whole different set of processes and institutions.
I've got to break right now and cut you off. We'll be right back in just a moment.
Cheryl Crane was a Hollywood star baby, the daughter of Lana Turner, and she was involved in the most scandalous tragedy in Tinseltown. She murdered her mother's mobster boyfriend. Be part of our live studio audience on Monday, January 11th, and hear Cheryl Crane's shocking story.
Welcome back to People Are Talking. Ma'am, stand up. Speak out.
I didn't really have a question.
Go ahead.
But I just had a comment. First of all, I think it's a disgrace with the caller that you have so much hatred in you for every nationality, whatever it is. Second of all, and you got a smirk on your face so you know I'm right. Second of all, you yourself had said the majority are now the black people, and maybe that's why the majority are getting killed or shot at.
Okay, let me go on to some other questions out here. Yes.
I notice there's a lot of pride between both of you, okay? And what I like to know is there any type of organization that both of you have that's being done to correct this problem between the racial incidents of the blacks and...
Is there any? Yes, there is. As a matter of fact, Alan Hevesy, who's the deputy majority leader of the New York State Assembly, has an organization through the Assembly that is, and he can speak for himself, is doing precisely that.
Dialogue with whom?
With Jews going into black communities, black churches, black elected officials going into synagogues. He can tell you more about it.
Okay.
It's going on throughout the city.
Let me try to work my way down. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, I would like to make the following statement. I'm Jewish. I immigrated twice.
From where?
Vienna. I have black friends here, very good friends. I've worked with them. The color is different. Their religion is totally different. One is Pentecostal, the other one is Episcopalian. We don't see color, we don't see religion. They are not, I'm pro-choice. They are anti-abortion. We just don't discuss it. They have their opinions. I have mine. We respect each other, and that's how we can be friends. And if we don't respect our difference, we'll never be friends.
Father Lucas, you talked about how things haven't changed that much over the course of the years, and how the position of blacks in American society has not really changed all that much. But if we look at New York City, for instance, we see black men and women in very high places of power, something that you wouldn't have seen 20 years ago or 30 years ago. Isn't that a sign of some sort of progress in and of itself?
Well, I think you put your finger on the very heart of the matter, the position of power and control. There is no black man, woman, or organization in this city that really has a position of power. Anywhere you go, I am pastor of Resurrection Church. It was a white mayor who, thinking I was a child, called upon a white cardinal archbishop who was really in charge to, quote, reprimand me. When you look at the position, if you talk about the position of Ben Ward, he's police commissioner. Who is he accountable to in terms of his appointment, in terms of his accountability? And therefore, anybody could play that game. You get a black face, but totally accountable to and control of. So whether you talk about a man in the cabinet who is implementing one of the most racist federal housing policies the city has ever known.
Is Mayor Koch a racist, in your opinion?
I would have a hard way to say he's not. But I think what you have to understand is that there are a number of good white folks, as well as black folks.
Some of my best friends are some good white folks.
Yeah, some of mine are too. But let's not
I've got to say, that sounds very condescending.
But let's not skew the issue. Who do not mind marching with us in terms of civil rights and those kinds of things. But when it comes time to upturning the power relationship and the control, ultimately, that white folks exercise over all the institutions, processes, and systems of this city, this state, and this country, they're not about ready to deal with that.
The other day, the new commissioner of schools turned to Ed Koch and said, "I think it's time for you to sit down." He may have been part of that process, but Richard Green turned around and told Koch when to sit. I've got to take a break.
All right. You imagine if you were in the same situation, running a school system that's less than 1/40th the size of New York.
I've got to take a break right now. We'll be right back in just a moment. Angry. During the break,
angry is not the word. I have been sitting here between the break listening to what I call the most asinine statements under the sun. Sir, let me tell you something. I am black. And as James Brown said, say it loud, I'm black and I'm proud. I am tired of black leaders who tell me I can't advance any further than the white man will let me. I must say what the white man says I have to say. That is a racist statement and a wrong statement. My name is Sarah Lee Mack White. I say what I want, when I want, and where I want.
Okay, let me get... Yes, sir, what kind of message do you hear today?
I have a comment regarding to the woman here. She makes a lot of sense about we are tired of hearing about this racial atmosphere, but even more so, we're tired of experiencing that something has to be done. Definitely.
She missed that. I think she missed what you were saying.
Will you guys stand up, please? There's a booklet... There's a booklet handed out that's called The Little Black Book, and it basically says that black men in New York City are an endangered species. And they say that we live in a racist society. When you hear Father Lucas speak, what sort of message do you hear from him?
Well, in a sense, it seems like racial tensions, they get a little worse.
Is it positive, though? Do you get anything from the message that can help you?
Not exactly.
Okay. Let me move on up here. Curtis Lewa, you've joined us today.
Yes.
You're out there patrolling the streets. Curtis, of course, is the founder of the Guardian Angels and the leader of the Guardian Angels. You brought us something very unusual. Can you guys stand up, please?
Richard, We're like the mercurochrome and the iodine. We're the healers. You have Lamont Shaquem Johnson, obviously a Muslim faith,
Hello?
and Charlie Spickler, who's a white Jewish fellow working side by side as healers, as Mrs. McWhite said. Remember, both you fellas, a lot of young people are watching, and they're going to follow into your reactions. If you preach hate and they feed off hate, then what you're going to get is hateful little huckleberries beating on one another in the city. Let's stop.
All right, wait a second. You guys have different opinions. I know there have been talk shows that got in trouble for this before. Could you guys shake hands on the air at least?
Shake hands with him.
Thank you for joining us this morning on People Are Talking. Thank you for joining us at home. Right now it's time to go to the newsroom with Sarah Lee and Van.
Okay, thank you very much. And coming up on the news at noon, some Long Island residents forced out into frigid nighttime temperatures.
The Siberian Express could be leaving our area soon.
But Lloyd Lindsay Young says, get ready for a fresh fall of snow.
Can't have it all, right? In sports, Larry Bird soars over the New York Knicks.
And the report card on American's Airlines on-time record is out, and we're going to tell you those airlines that are not making the grades and the ones that are doing well.
And take time out for tea. More and more people are discovering this quiet pleasure.
Join us for the news at noon, maybe a little tea.
Coming up.
Information on any of the topics we discussed today, call our hotline number 201-330-3886.
Welcome back. There are a lot of misperceptions. There are a lot of ugly little racisms that exist in our city. A lot of ugly little lies and ideas that we have about each other. Some things, some parts of them may be true, some of them may not be true. But the basic fact is, we've all got to live in this area together. And that's something we all have to live with. So let's start living with it. So everybody in the audience, turn around and just shake the hand of the person next to you, black, white, Jewish, Catholic, whatever. Talk to each other, live together, and let live together. Thanks for joining us this morning on People Are Talking. Tomorrow we'll look at something that is probably not as important, but very controversial as well. Broadcast news, the hit movie. Is it a true representation of what TV journalism is really like? We have Roger Grimsby from NBC. We've got Jennifer Valapi here from Channel 9. We have Roz Abrams from ABC and Mike Schneider from CBS to tell you what really happens when you watch a newscast. Don't miss that show. And have a great day. All my best.
Guests for People Are Talking stay at the Meadowlands Hilton. Pastry for our studio audience provided by Speakerman's Bakery with 4 locations to serve you.